have I created space for hope in my home? Is my home a space where my kids can hope and my wife can hope? Does my love look like a hope infusion?
Yeah. Welcome back to the BraveCo podcast, everyone. I'm with the one, the only, the myth, the legend, the pastor, Cole Zick.
Only mythical because I disappear for long extended periods of at a time.
Yeah. Bro, you were just on a cruise, weren't you? Not a cruise, a sailboat.
A marriage sailing retreat.
Bro, they didn't even help your marriage, did it?
Well, we were the host.
Oh.
So no, it challenged and tested our marriage. Because we were the ones cooking the food and doing all the preparations and planning. And agreeing with your wife as you plan is maybe the greatest accomplishment you will ever accomplish in life.
That's true.
As you know.
Man, I'm seeing all kinds of breakthrough with marriages.
Oh yeah, so are we.
More breakthrough in the last year than I've seen my entire life.
Man, that's amazing. Yeah, we've seen a lot of the same at our church, which is incredible.
What do you feel like you're attributing it to?
That's a great question.
We didn't talk about starting off here, but
yeah,
for those of you that know, Cole comes in once a month and we talk about whatever's on our minds to talk about.
Yep.
And then we just go down that road for a little bit. So
yeah.
anyways.
When I think about the scenarios directly, I think that I've seen a lot of men more, not that it's always the man, because it's not.
Yeah.
Right. However, the men are the people that I'm interacting with. Like, I'm not having a woman come and saying, hey, can you counsel me one-on-one about my husband? That's not a situation I'm in, right? For obvious reasons. I'm watching men take responsibility like I haven't seen before.
Yeah, that's true.
Like countless guys that are coming forward on their own to work on stuff. Not just one or two either. Like, I've had a number of scenarios where I was so impressed at the guy saying, hey, here's where I'm really at. I don't want to be here anymore, and I'll do whatever it takes to not be here. And that that makes all the difference.
Dude, it does.
And I don't know what has inspired them. It's different. Like, I don't know if there's pain. Yeah.
Maybe other men that they're seeing stepping up.
That for sure is one. Like, one instance in particular, like, it was a men's group and he saw these other men and said, okay, I need to be like that. That was for sure there.
Do you know what I'm seeing happening? Like, a big change is I've seen a lot of people try to solve past issues with no emotional connection or no money in their emotional bank account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so a lot of couples are so empty, and when you're really empty, right, it leaves you in the spot where you don't have any grace, you don't have any patience, you don't have somebody 100%. That you feel fond
you don't give the benefit of the doubt like you would if there had been investment made.
So you're trying to solve all these issues in their marriage.
Yeah.
With facts, winning arguments, withholding, and being able to come in and go, actually, put those arguments aside, put the past pain aside for a little bit, build your emotional bank account, build connection.
Yep.
Don't put that stuff, we're going to look at it. Build up your emotional bank account by turning towards one another.
Yeah.
By being a great partner, by complimenting each other, by showing up day to day.
Yep.
And then from that place, go tackle some of the bigger things. Dude, it's everything.
That's it. Yeah. That just changed your marriage if you listened.
Yeah, it's true, man.
Yeah, it's great.
I had a couple that was on the brink of divorce. Two. I'll give you two of them. One couple 3 weeks ago, I sat down with them, and literally the first thing they said to me on the Zoom call was, we decided last night we're going to get a divorce. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Instantly, I was like, oh, Holy Spirit, help me out.
Yeah.
So I said, tell me about it. Tell me why. So they start talking about why they want to get a divorce. There's no infidelity. There's no pornography. It was just pain from some things that happened in the past. And I realized really quick, like, it's not that you guys don't love each other. You don't love the pain in marriage.
Yes.
And you don't know how to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So I literally asked them, like, why did you marry him? What made you She starts crying. She's like, oh, he's so incredible. His mind is
Yeah,
so
it's
amazing.
great.
Why'd you marry her, right? By the end of the hour, they were going, we want our marriage. We just don't want the pain.
Yep.
But they had no emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
They had zero bandwidth and no one to walk them through.
Because all those little chips that were never addressed. Yeah.
And then,
big,
I
man.
had another one like a month before that where he's sitting in my office going like, I can't do another day. We've been 2 years like this. I'm like, 2 years like what? Not sleeping in the same room, not having sex. A very short amount of time. I literally told them, guys, it would take me a year to unwind who was right, who was wrong, who really did what. Can we just start by acknowledging you both have really messed up in your marriage? You both have caused a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And you're so incredibly sorry. And you're willing to go on this journey of cleaning up your mess, making each other feel like a priority. And you don't know how to do that on your own.
Yep.
That's how you got here.
Totally.
So they did that, right? They did that apology. And then I was like, all I want you to do for the next week is strategically pour into each other. How can I make her feel known, feel seen, feel cared about? There's no arguments, like you're not allowed to.
Yep.
Sounds counterproductive. Sounds like we're just dodging all
Like
the issues.
stuffing, sure.
Yeah.
Putting it on the
It's
rug.
actually the opposite. It's been incredible.
Yeah.
So you build up this massive bank account just over even a week. You build up the hope in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that for like a couple of weeks. And then we started to look at some of the issues in the past. Dude, they moved through them so quick.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Totally different.
Yeah, man.
Anyways.
It's awesome.
That's great, dude.
It is great.
So you did that marriage retreat. How was it?
It was great. Yeah, so Kate and I are starting to, it was our first one. We hope to be able to get another one. You know, there's sail trips they go to Croatia and British Virgin Islands. We were in the British Virgin Islands.
That's hard, man.
Super tough. With 5 couples from our church, which was awesome.
That's cool.
The depth and connection and, the days are spent with your spouse and hiking and snorkeling and just doing great stuff. And then you have dinner together with all the couples in the evening. And then you spend about an hour and a half going through pretty light content, but then it leads into great depth and talk and prayer and, all that. So, I think getting to do it with people that were, that are a part of our daily life was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's powerful.
We're, hoping to be able to do it again next year. And it was awesome. Couldn't have been better.
I love it. So we don't talk about politics much here.
Yeah.
But we haven't been together on the podcast
since the election.
Since
America lost.
What do you mean since America lost?
I mean, obviously we wanted Harris to be president.
Oh, God dang.
Just joking, guys. I just thought I'd start it off kind of fun and hot.
Yeah. I mean, we don't talk about politics much here.
Yeah.
I think for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not like wildly into politics.
Yeah.
And neither are you.
Nope.
But
I care a ton, actually.
Me too.
But I also am not, it's not the main story of my day.
Yeah. Me neither. I just check to see what's happening.
Yep.
Pretty, I'd love to know your thoughts. Like, pretty eventful stuff happening.
Yeah. A lot of eventful stuff. I mean, unfiltered, unprepared thoughts. It tests a lot of what you think and why you think things should happen a certain way. I think politics does, right? Like, I have a pretty strong, just to be clear, Armenian, not Calvinist, freedom of will, believe all of that, totally. However, I also believe in the sovereignty of God and that he always has a bigger plan that he's working, right? And so I think to preface, I've never been super riled up on any election. There's not an election I've ever been like, oh man, if this doesn't go our way, country's closing down, we're basically going to become Canada South, or whatever.
I felt that this year though.
Yeah, I didn't even. Oof. Like, I even had a moment with someone in our church that they were like, they can't not talk about politics. Like, you literally can't have a conversation without it going politics.
That's fun.
Super fun. Yeah, it's always my favorite. And the person's older than me, and they mentioned, oh, just praying every single day that it's Donald, because if it's not, I mean, I think it's over. It's over. And I stopped him and I go, I got to be honest with you.
Do it.
I'm 40 years old.
Yeah.
Every single election for the last 40 years, from as early as I can remember as a kid, that was the statement I remember being told, if Bill Clinton is elected president, the country is over.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like numb to that statement.
I think
It's
are.
never ended.
You know what's been the difference for me this election, I think, is how radically weaponized the government was against Donald J. Trump. And then how far they moved the agenda, the LGBTQ agenda.
Yeah.
And
among lots of other ones.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, and so for me, I've really felt like, man, if we don't anchor this election, we're going to move so much further into destruction than we've ever seen. But I do feel like, so when I take a step back and look at 2016, Donald comes in, we start to see some good change or whatever, not all perfect, but then 2020, the Democrats go wild. They win, they go wild. And my dad had actually prophesied that Donald J. Trump would win presidency again. And so I was really anticipating, 4 years, right? 2020, another 4 years of him coming in. But it's cool because I feel like when I look at it, I feel like the Lord's sovereign plan, and this may not even have been his plan, but I feel like his sovereign plan was to expose all the different places of destruction, evil.
Yeah. Well, and you look at it, it's actually probably better that it happened the way that it did.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because I think at the end of the day, America is super fickle, really, truthfully, which is any group of people is. You look at scripture over and over again, the people that were led were cows. Like the Israelites would have been in slavery 14 times over if Moses if he went by a voting system, right?
Yeah, it's true. 100%.
So people just swing. And it almost was 4 years of allowing the cards to be put out and shown on the table.
Yeah.
Right. And, I have a lot of dialogue with my best friend from high school, good, close friend. His name's Jason, actually. No possible way he'll watch this. He's super liberal. And so we're going back and forth all the time, text. And truthfully, I think one of the things I dislike the most about our political climate is that you have to pick entirely one side or the other. It's become so party-based as opposed to policy or situational. Like, I don't love that, and we'll go back and forth regularly. And there's times where I go, Jay, I don't even think you believe what you're saying, actually.
Yeah.
Like, what you're trying to say is true. You actually know it's not. But all you're doing is being fed from sources that convince you of your rightness.
Where are you getting your information from?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the hard part for me is it's so hard to find accurate information.
Yeah.
You have to dig deep in on purpose to find it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Which I think is why I love this new administration is you have an administration where Donald Trump isn't getting paid, right? He's not taking a salary.
And he's got nothing to be reelected for.
He doesn't need their money. You pull in an Elon Musk who doesn't need people's money. You've
got to love a leader, regardless of, like if you could get undetached, I'll be totally honest. Here we go. It's going to be on record.
Oh, no.
I've not always loved Donald Trump.
Yeah, no.
I've not been his biggest fan.
Me neither.
I always think that there's a better way to say it almost every time. Almost everything he says, I wish he didn't say the way he said it.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, granted, I'm warming up to it and I get less irritated because I'm like, well, it is what it is. However, whatever your preferences are of polished personality approach, blah, blah, blah. The gift to America is a president that is not incentivized by any other thing
Yeah.
because he can't get reelected and he doesn't need the money.
Yeah. It's wild, dude.
Like that is a
Yeah.
gift that people don't realize how big of a gift it is.
And then pulling Elon in and RFK and Tulsi it's so wild. Having a guy in there like RFK to look at big pharma, to look at vaccines, to look at what we're eating and is incredible. So anyways, my dad prophesied
Yep.
that we're in a new era and that we're coming into a new era. Now he did that before we knew who won the election. So that was this last year. He started prophesying we're coming into a new era. This is a completely new season. God's turning the tables. And honestly, I feel it in so many areas. In marriages, I really do. I'm telling you, like, I just want to fire people. I want to fire men up. I'm saying, if you're sitting here right now and you're going like, man, my marriage is on the brink. We're in a harder spot than we've ever been. We're in a new era. I'm seeing more people get well than ever. I'm also seeing it in like the political world. We're in a new era. We're in a new era with what God's doing. We're in a new era in a whole bunch of different areas. So
Yeah.
I feel like this is an incredible season of men rising up, men taking their spot, taking ownership, building strong marriages, building strong relationships. We got a lot of work to do, but ultimately, we're in a new era. It's exciting.
And that, I think that even understanding that is probably really important for people to know it. And the way that I receive or even translate or, whatever to process that statement from your dad is there's just a reality that there's momentum that can be captured collectively.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas something that was once hard became easy.
Yes.
Where, like on a basketball team, I'm coaching my son's 7th grade basketball team. Some games, a kid starts to make his shots, then another kid starts to, before you know it, no kid can miss.
Momentum is a real thing.
And then there's other games where kid can't, we'll miss, we'll be shooting 10%, it feels like. And I'm granted it's 7th grade, so that's probably not shocking. But where there's something that goes, well, even more so in the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
I really believe that spiritually, and I don't personally attach this necessarily to the election, other than I think that there is something that's shifting in the iniquities, the principalities, the battle that's not against flesh and blood.
Yeah.
That you can sense, where there's this breakthrough happening. There's belief systems being changed.
Yes.
There's people that are believing that wouldn't believe before.
Yes.
There's people that have hope, that have given up hope.
I agree.
And you could try to nail down the practical source of why they now have hope that they didn't have. But the reality of it, what I believe is, I believe in the spiritual realm, there's something going on that's unseen right now that's actually shifting, and it's allowing people to think differently than they would have thought before.
I think that honestly, that is one of the major differences between hope and hopelessness. Is I now believe for something that I was unable to see before.
Totally.
So I didn't even try for it. I didn't even reach for it. And it's one, the shift in the mindset, but really too, I do think that there's something happening in the spirit realm where God goes, okay, now I'm going to grant you favor. Now I'm going to open up doors that weren't open before. Now I'm moving, I'm shifting. Things are changing. And so anyways, I just feel like it is. I feel like it's a new era. I feel like we're in a season of blessing. We've experienced it at BraveCo. I'll give you an example, a really wild example. One of our goals at BraveCo this year is to reach 300 churches and 10,000 men. Okay, so we had that goal in November. In November, we had, I think, 89 churches signed up, something like that, something around there, give or take 10. In January alone, without marketing and advertising to churches, we signed up 100 churches.
Wow.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
For reals. Like when we start looking back, like where did they come from?
Yep.
Things are shifting.
Yeah.
Things are
great.
changing. And I'm looking at a bunch of different areas and a bunch of
Yeah.
different categories and going, okay, there's favor where there wasn't favor before.
Yes.
And I had this wild dream. I didn't actually, I'm questioning, should I share this dream or not? I had this dream. Well, I'll save it. We're going to do a podcast next week.
Okay.
I'm going to save it for that.
Okay, we're going to save it. The
Yeah.
dream will be next week.
Yeah, it'll be next week. Jump on next week and I'll tell you the dream. So anyways, I'm really excited for where we're heading,
Yeah.
what we're doing. And I'm excited to see what our now administration does in the country. I think we're on the right track with exposing and revealing and getting rid of the stuff that's been deceptive and broken. And I think it's a sign of what we all need to do in our own lives.
Yep. Agreed.
You know? Cheers.
To America.
Cheers to us.
Cheers to us.
What time is it? 42. You were telling me about this series that you guys are doing in your church.
Yeah.
And I thought it was awesome. I wanted to just talk about it for a little bit on here.
Yeah, we've been going through just a relationship series on, unpacking how do you live in healthy relationship with people? How do you have conflict well? How do you have agreement well? How do you, thrive in these areas? I don't know that we actually intended to go down there. We're in a larger series called Becoming Us.
Huh?
Our church is still feels very fresh. We're still really becoming who we are as an identity.
Yeah.
There's certain things we've intentionally built. There's other things we've intentionally not built yet, waiting for the release of the Lord to do it and different things like that. But in the middle of this Becoming Us series, the Lord just kind of led us into this topic. And it's interesting with relationship, when you talk about relationship, without trying, just if you know how people are, you therefore almost accidentally gravitate towards, can you disagree well? Because that seems to be the challenge for most people, right? Like, they love relationship when they're undisappointed in it. Once you become disappointed and you've been betrayed or you've felt they've failed you, it's really tough. And so this week we're excited because we're diving in, 1 Corinthians 13, where it talks about love is patient, love is kind, and all of that stuff. We're literally just focusing on the last portion where it says it always hopes, it always trusts, it always protects, and it always perseveres. It's a pretty skipped over portion of that verse. Like, most of the time when people teach on that, they go, are you patient? Or is Jason kind? Is Jason patient? And that's great, right? Like, that's,
right.
I've preached that same message that way.
For sure.
Right. But then we go, and it always, if I could just do it, if I could preach the message the way it's preached, and it always hopes, it always trusts, it always protects, and it always perseveres. Let's pray that we'll be that type of person. And you just brush over that part.
Totally, it's true.
And you look at that and you're like, well, actually, that might have been the biggest meat in the whole thing.
It's the staying power, yeah.
Like, love always perseveres. I could probably preach for a month on that statement right there.
It's true.
Because in order for you to understand that, persevere through what? Well, if you need love to persevere and love perseveres, and if perseverance is required, then the relationship's on the rocks.
Yeah.
If perseverance is required, the relationship's not going good. It's not healthy. There's been a disappointment, a betrayal. If perseverance is, if Jesus needed to make the statement through Paul in Corinthians that love always perseveres, he's making a statement that when it's hard, you do not get the excuse to run.
Yeah.
And then you have to unpack all four of those. Well, always protects. So that's what we're doing this week, is we're literally just going to go after those four statements. And how do we, as a church, as individuals, as godly men and women, how do we make sure our love always does those things?
It's an interesting thought. I don't know that it's possible to build a deep relationship without that.
Yeah.
Because
couldn't agree more.
Yeah, trust isn't built by the absence of mistakes, but by how we clean up a mess. And then we also would agree that conflict is necessary to build a deep relationship, right?
Yep.
It's in knowing how you're going to manage yourself and manage my heart inside a conflict that really decides the depth of exposure.
Totally.
So it was when I came to my dad and shared that I was having oral sex with a guy friend of mine and
Yeah.
how he handled that well and saw the good in me and believed in me and
Mhm.
loved me. It was in expressing to him, that I had been stuck in masturbation for 2 years and him coming beside me and inviting
Yep.
me in and
That's
running
it.
with me, right? It's
No
in
doubt.
me having going through a divorce and these men
Yeah.
coming around me.
That's it.
It's in that. It's in day in and day out.
Well, even when I started at Moral Revolution 7 years ago, people that knew me and your dad would regularly early on, like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm great. What do you mean? Like, how is it working for Chris for you?" And I'm like, "Good. Why would it not be good?" Like, "Well, because your personality is like him and, like
Yeah.
all this stuff." And then they would say, like, are you guys getting close? I feel like we're getting close. However, we haven't disagreed yet, so I don't totally know where we stand.
Yeah.
And people would look at me like I'm nuts. I'm like, I'm not looking for a fight. However, I've learned early on, you're going to learn where you're at, and your dad and I didn't, even when I was there, it wasn't like we had a bunch of big things,
Yeah.
right? Like there were a couple things that we had to work through. Um, a couple, one probably big one, and then some other that were real easy to go through. But you're 100% right. Like, and there was even one where we were working through this conflict. He really didn't want me to do something, about this, and I'm like, well, unless you tell me not to, I'm going to keep doing it. Like, I need you to say don't, or
Yeah.
otherwise, I'm not stopping. And
Wasn't a sin issue, just a
no,
difference of
yeah,
opinion.
yeah. And so and then he would bring it up randomly. Like I'd be out in public and he'd be like, "Hey, you still doing this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still doing it." He'd see Caitlin. Is he still doing this? Like, I do not want him spending his time doing this, right? And so finally, I asked for a meeting with him. I'm like, "Hey, can you either tell me to quit or stop bringing it up?
Yeah.
Like, do one of the two, And he looked at me and he goes, "Yes." Never brought it up again,
Yeah.
and yet told me everything he thought. We had a moment, and when we're done, Kate's like, "What do you think?" I go, "I feel so much closer to him."
Yeah.
Like, we bonded, we got closer, we heard each other, and now what's really cool is, we've been out of that role for a year and a half. I don't know, 2 months ago, maybe, your dad texts me, and he goes, which he texts me all the time, by the way, just saying, "Hey, how's the church going?
Yeah.
What do you guys need? How you doing?
Yeah.
Miss ya," like, all kinds, he's phenomenal like that. But then he also goes, "Hey, I heard of this situation in this relationship. I really think you need to go after making sure that's right." I can't tell you how loved it made me
Mm.
feel for him to say, "You need to go fix this."
Yeah. That's awesome.
Right? Like for him to,
Yeah.
when I'm not underneath him in this structure, the hierarchy, where he is still like, "Hey, I love you enough to confront you
Yeah.
still.
To
I
tell you the
love
truth.
you enough to tell you to go fix this. I still love you enough to say,
Yeah.
I have a love that perseveres, Cole. You may not be my employee anymore, but I have a protecting and a persevering love that says, this is going to be a problem for you if you don't fix this problem."
Yeah.
We don't necessarily in the moment always realize how loving that is. Like when your dad did that, he was persevering, he was protecting.
Yeah.
I mean, he was living out Corinthians to be that for me.
Yeah. It's interesting because those love always hopes, love always perseveres, love never fails. Those things to me become like, for instance, it's basically a standard. It's not just a standard for love, but it's how you know if you are experiencing love from
Yes.
somebody, right? It is actually, uh, that's how we test the metal.
Yep.
Is you go,
That's great.
is what I'm experiencing hope?
Yep.
Is what I'm experiencing perseverance, right? Am I in a relationship that's persevered? Am I
Mhm.
in a relationship that always has hope? And
That's
perfect love
great.
casts out fear. So it's like if what I'm in is full of fear and is full of doubt and is full of shame, that's not That's not the biblical love that
Yep.
God's talking about.
Yeah, it's true. That's right.
And I think when we look at what keeps us from operating in that biblical love, it would be self-protection, it would be
Hmm.
fear, it would be shame,
Assumption of how they're going to respond.
assumption. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's such a high bar to live up to.
It is. And I will say this, it almost feels, I would say it feels impossible for most because most have never seen it.
Yeah.
I would say that the majority of people I know, truthfully, when I describe to people our years at Moral Revolution, I always say this. I think the secret sauce of Bethel's actually this: healthy relationship and loving well.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's lots of things that make the
Absolutely.
environment great.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was the thing that captured Kate and I the most when we
Yeah.
got there 7 or 8 years ago, however long it's been now, was, oh, wow, they do relationship well.
Yeah.
You feel the freedom to be you here
Yeah.
because you don't feel like you's going to be rejected just because you've misstepped or
Right.
whatever, right? And even since, people are like, man, what's it like doing a church in town when you're on staff? And I go, yeah, I don't think it'd work for most people.
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't. I can't speak for every other environment, but I hear stories. And I think that's part of the thing, Jay, is people, because you haven't seen a persevering love in most contexts or a protecting love in most, you haven't got to see the results of it. I can identify it now. I have language that I didn't have 8 years ago because I've watched it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've been gifted things from Bethel for our small church, for our church to thrive.
Yeah.
Right? I have disappointed you on multiple occasions, and you don't have a record of wrongs.
Right.
There's not a, funny, I guess this is kind of a funny story. I was the CEO of BraveCo for 5 whole days.
It's true.
And I got to the end, I got to Friday, I'm like, Jay, I'm really sorry. I can't do this. And he's like, why? I'm like, I just don't want to do the meetings with you all the time. And not that you are the problem. I can't. And like, I don't need you to even pay me for the 5 days.
Yep.
I just can't do this.
Best and worst week of my life.
And I knew going in, I'm like, I am walking in and we had to fight hard to get your dad to say, yeah, you can do MR and BraveCo.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, we had to work through so much, put your neck on the line.
It's true.
And I was aware of all this.
Yeah.
But not everybody gets to see that type of, they don't get to be in situations where they've deeply disappointed somebody. They have not followed through. I committed to do something I didn't follow through with, right? Like, they don't get to, they're not in a situation where they get to watch a persevering love in response to a failure. And that's why you talk about it. It's like people listen and play like, is that even possible? But you watch it and now you get language for it. And then all of a sudden you become it. And now, as I'm making decisions, I'm regularly in my new environment that we're on our own. We're an island.
Yeah.
Like, I fail now, it's me that fails.
It's true.
Right? Like, I don't get to, there's no bailouts and there's nobody to blame.
It's true.
But we just walked through a really hard thing that I shared a little bit of it with you. And I'm literally, what I learned from my time at Bethel, watching Bethel with persevering love, watching and again, Bethel isn't the right language because that's an organization, but the humans that make up the culture.
Yeah.
And I think that, to me, is the big piece to it, is if you haven't seen it and you don't know what it looks like, still have hope and faith that it can be forged, because what 1 Corinthians 13 describes as love is possible. And I would go pretty far and make a big statement. I think that we get to see it and be a part of it.
Well, I mean, to me, that's why it's so important that you experience the love of God that's real, is because you can't give away anything that you don't have.
Yeah, that's it, Jay.
Right? So if I'm trying to show up for somebody, but I've never had somebody show up for me, and I don't have a God that shows up for me on a regular basis, a God that's forgotten my sins, says he doesn't even remember, a God that's made all things new, a God that had a plan for me before I was born.
Yep.
A God that always has hope for me.
Come on.
Like, that's the reserve that I'm pulling from.
Yes.
That's actually the source that I'm pulling from. So when I show up for you, I'm showing up for you out of this deep source, right? Jesus is showing up for people all over the place. And he's not doing it as Jesus. He's doing it as a man who's come and he's pulling from what Father God's giving him
it's great.
and pouring it out. And so I just think, I really do. I think that that's why it's so profound to have a deep relationship with a God that loves you as a son.
Mm-hmm. Because
I
it
mean,
reframes how you
it does.
respond.
100%
Yeah.
is, as a son, I know what my dad's endured with me.
Yes.
I know it. I know that because now that I have sons, I
Yeah.
know that there was a large portion of time
Yeah, man.
where I didn't give anything back to my dad.
100%.
I know there's a large portion of time where I disappointed my dad.
Yep.
There's a large portion of time where I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I've been forgiven so much. Like, he who's forgiven so much loves so much and forgives so
Mm-hmm.
much. But I think it's really easy for us to forget that we were forgiven so much.
Yeah, it's totally
And
true. One of the things I say at our
yeah,
church all the time is I never want to spiritually mature past the place of being in awe of salvation.
yeah, it's true.
Like,
That's real.
because that's some of the feel in church is, oh, if it's deep, then you're onto these deeper things. There's nothing deeper than the reality that you were forgiven and you didn't deserve to be forgiven, that you were covered and you didn't deserve to be covered. And every relational decision I make has to be seen through that filter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the one step further is, and now I belong.
Yes.
So to me, everything's coming out of that. So
Yeah.
it's an incredible, it really is. That's why I love when you were starting to talk about it. I was like, oh, we should talk about that today to finish it out, because everything that we do comes out of that place of being loved. And we really are like, uh, for men, you are the one that's always supposed to open up the door for your wife, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. It's a big thing when you're dating to like open the car door and make sure
Mm-hmm.
you're in front of the woman and open the door for her as she walks in,
Yeah.
and to take that spot, that we don't ever stop opening the door for a woman.
Right.
So if you will do that for her, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, we're talking about how you bring your love into the relationship.
Yep.
It's our jobs to open the door for them. So I'm going to always hope. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to manage myself in conflict. I'm going to be the one uh, uh, that's showing up day in and day out. And so to me, like,
Well,
it's,
and I would even say really, really simple in marriage is protect your spouse's weaknesses,
yeah,
right? Like we've all been in awkward situations where a husband and a wife are jokingly talking about each other's failures, but you can tell in both of their
yeah,
faces
it's pain.
there's just pain
Yeah,
oozing out, right? And the importance of protecting
yeah,
in moments like that. Um, Creating a space. I think as the man, which you're saying, I believe completely, asking myself, have I created space for hope in my home?
yeah,
Is my home
it's
a
true.
space where my kids can hope and my wife can hope? Does my love look like a hope infusion?
Yeah,
And really figuring that out.
it's true. Well, man, hopefully you enjoyed this week's episode.
Little bit more bantering and all over the place than normal, but it's kind of fun.
I like it. Maybe we just did it for us this week.
Maybe we did just do it for us this week.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We will see you next week on the BraveCo podcast. Hey, BraveCo man. Hopefully you loved this week's episode. Listen, if you have not subscribed to our podcast, you are already behind. Go ahead and click right here to subscribe to our podcast. And if you have not watched last week's episode, you can click right here and watch last week's episode. And listen, if you want to upgrade your wardrobe, you can check out some of our new hats that we have in stock and all our other swag. Go to braveco.org and you can look at our store there. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.